There are few things worse than watching someone hurt your mom, especially when that person is supposed to be family. For years, my stepdad lived in our house, ate at our table, and acted like he cared about all of us. But behind our backs, he was cheating on my mom. Not only that, he got another woman pregnant. And when my mom finally confronted him, he didn't apologize or show even a little regret. Instead, he said he was happy about it. That was the moment my siblings and I made a decision. If he was going to destroy our family, we were going to make sure his life fell apart too. After my mom divorced my biological dad, life was incredibly hard for her. Their marriage had lasted 25 years, but it ended badly. My dad had been manipulative and toxic, and by the time the divorce was final, my mom was emotionally drained. For a long time, she seemed completely lost. Eventually, though, she met someone new. His name was Chris. Chris wasn't exactly the kind of person we expected her to end up with. My mom worked as a correctional officer at the county jail, and Chris was someone she had met while he was an inmate. He had been locked up for a DUI. Looking back now, that should have been the first massive red flag, but at the time, my mom was still recovering from a painful divorce. She was lonely and grieving, and Chris seemed to make her happy. Because of that, my brother, my sister, and I tried to accept him. At first, things actually seemed fine. Chris and I even bonded over video games, and for a while, it felt like we were functioning as a normal family. We all lived together, shared meals, and tried to move forward. But everything started to change in 2017. One day, Chris had to go to the courthouse for what was supposed to be a routine probation check-in. He left in the morning, and we expected him back later that afternoon. Instead, he disappeared. Hours passed, and we started to worry. Eventually, the phone rang. It was Chris, but he wasn't nearby. He was calling from Texas. According to him, when he arrived at the courthouse, the FBI had arrested him. Apparently, his family back in Texas had been involved in gang and drug-related crimes, and at some point, Chris had been in a car during a drug deal. The authorities brought him back to Texas so he could testify. In exchange for cooperating, he was given a reduced sentence and temporary release before the trial. My mom was devastated, but for reasons I still don't fully understand, she stayed with him. About a year later, he came back home. That's when things really started to fall apart. Not long after he returned, the drinking began. And it wasn't casual drinking. Chris wasn't just having a beer after work. He was going through nearly half of a 24-pack every single day. Worse than that, he was the kind of drunk who became mean. He would start arguments over nothing, insult people in the house, and create constant tension. Thankfully, it never turned physical, but emotionally, it was exhausting. My mom kept making excuses for him, saying he was stressed about the upcoming trial, stressed about work, stressed about everything. Eventually, though, even she reached her limit. One night, Chris came home extremely drunk, barely able to stand straight. My mom confronted him and asked if he had been drinking. He didn't even try to deny it. That was enough for her. She told him to get out of the house. He grabbed a few things and went to stay with a friend. The next morning, we started packing the rest of his belongings so he wouldn't have to come back inside the house. While we were doing that, someone knocked on the door. When we opened it, we were surprised to see Betty, one of Chris's coworkers and someone I actually went to high school with. She looked nervous and said she needed to talk to my mom about something important. Before she said anything, she asked my mom to promise not to reveal where the information had come from. Then she told us everything. Chris had been cheating. The other woman's name was Darla. According to Betty, Chris and Darla had been doing sexual things at their workplace, sometimes during shifts and sometimes after hours. Betty had caught them more than once, but Chris had threatened her job if she told anyone. Then she revealed the worst part of all. Darla was pregnant. My mom just sat there in complete shock. It was like the reality hadn't fully reached her yet. But when it finally did, she snapped. She told us to grab every single thing that belonged to Chris. His clothes, his electronics, his furniture, everything. We carried it all outside and dumped it in the alley behind our house. Then my mom called him. Chris didn't deny anything. He admitted the cheating immediately, and he didn't sound ashamed at all. In fact, he said he was happy that Darla was pregnant, because it meant he would finally have a child of his own. My mom had refused to have more children, because previous pregnancies had nearly destroyed her health, and he used that as his justification. There was no apology, no regret, nothing. After that, he came back once with a police officer to collect the rest of his belongings, and we thought that would be the end of him. But my siblings and I weren't satisfied with simply letting him walk away. Our mom just wanted to move on and forget about him, but we couldn't accept the idea that he could cheat, lie, and destroy our family without facing any consequences. So we decided to start with his job. Chris was working as the manager of a Dairy Queen franchise, so we contacted the owner and explained everything. The cheating at work, the threats toward employees, and the sexual activity on company property. The owner was furious. Chris was fired immediately and banned from working at any of the franchise locations. Ironically, Betty ended up being promoted to store manager afterward. Chris moved in with Darla in another town about an hour away. Not long after that, we found out he had managed to get a job at another Dairy Queen in that town. So, we contacted that owner as well. It took longer that time because nothing had happened there yet, but eventually he lost that job too. At that point, Chris had no job and nowhere to go, but somehow he still wasn't finished causing problems. A little while later, we started noticing something strange. Chris had been driving around our neighborhood and watching our house. It felt like he was blaming us for everything that had happened. But Chris had one big problem. Because of his DUI and legal situation, he didn't even have a driver's license. So we called the police, told them what car he was driving, and explained that he shouldn't legally be on the road. A few weeks later, the police pulled him over. He was arrested for driving without a license and driving under the influence. But that wasn't the worst of it. When police searched the house he was staying in, they found guns. Chris was a felon, which meant he legally couldn't be anywhere near firearms. That added even more charges. He ended up back in jail, and once that sentence was finished, he was sent straight back to Texas prison for the drug case. While he was locked up, his son was born. By that point, though, Darla had realized that Chris was a disaster, and she cut ties with him completely. While he was in prison, Chris started sending letters to my mom, one after another. Some of them were apologies, others were him begging her to take him back, and some blamed everyone else for his situation. My mom didn't even read them. She burned every single one. Eventually, we moved to another state and started over. Chris got out of prison years later. The last thing we heard was that he was living in Kansas and struggling with child support payments after Darla sued him. Meanwhile, my mom found a new boyfriend, someone who actually treats her with respect. My brother and sister moved on with their lives, and things are finally peaceful again. Looking back now, revenge wasn't really the goal. Protecting our mom was. Chris thought he could cheat, lie, and destroy our family, and then walk away like nothing had happened. But sometimes the people you hurt have families standing behind them. When that happens, your actions eventually catch up to you. Chris didn't ruin our lives. In the end, he ruined his own. And honestly, that kind of justice lasts forever.